Hi, welcome to Give Me the Bible, where God's Word speaks for itself. In continuing our discussion of the eldership, I want to ask a couple questions. First of all, do churches have to have elders? Is it just an absolute must for them to have elders? Well, let me start off by saying that it is absolutely ideal. Okay, it is clear in the Bible that it's the ideal to have elders. In fact, look again in Acts 14. We looked at this passage before in Acts 14, and notice what Paul does in Acts chapter 14 and verse, if I can get there, verse 23. Acts 14, verse 23. When they appointed elders for them in every church, having prayed with fasting, they commended them to the Lord in whom they had believed. So there clearly they were going around appointing elders in every church. All right, notice Titus chapter 1. Titus 1, Paul writes to Titus, and he says in verse 5, Titus 1 verse 5, "For this reason I left you in Crete, that you would set in order what remains and appoint elders in every city as I directed you." And then he goes through the list of qualifications for elders there. So then clearly, just from those two passages, you see that it's important. It was something that needed to be done. That yes, the congregations needed to have elders over them. However, we're going to have to use some logic here in understanding that since we have texts like Titus 1 and 1 Timothy 3 that give us qualifications for elders, well, we have to understand that there's got to be some situations in which a congregation, a local church, simply doesn't have any men that are qualified. Okay, I've seen that happen before. I've been a part of churches that, well, we didn't have elders, not because we thought, well, God's way is, forget elders, we don't really want any. No, we actually really did want elders, but we didn't have men that were qualified in our church. And I think that can certainly happen. And let me just tell you, it's clear to me when you work with a church that has no elders and you work with a church that has elders, it is clear to me why the Lord has appointed elders, because it just, things run so much more smoothly. It is so much easier and more efficient as a congregation to have those spiritual overseers, those pastors that are guiding the flock. And let me just ask this other question as well. What if you only have one qualified man? What if only one person in the congregation is qualified? Can you appoint him as elder? Is there a position of pastor of a church? Because listen, you hear this a lot again in our society, that so-and-so is the pastor of the church, okay? And usually, one, they're mistaking that for the preacher, because the guy's not qualified at all. And two, they are assuming that it's okay to just have one pastor or one elder of a congregation. Let me just say this. You don't see any examples in the New Testament at all of having one elder over a church. Okay, whenever there are elders appointed, it is always in the plural. All right, you never see an example of somebody addressing one elder as if they were the only elder at a congregation. And I'll say that just from the Bible, from the New Testament. You just don't read about it. Therefore, don't do it. Okay, I don't think that the Lord would approve of just having one elder over a congregation. And I think, again, there's a great amount of wisdom in that. All right, it's trouble when you set one person in charge of a congregation. That's just not really a good thing to do. Okay, and I see a lot of wisdom in that. And believe me, there's a lot of situations where you have one person ruling over a congregation, and the power goes to their head, or it's just the case that they don't have somebody else to bounce ideas off of, and so it's kind of just their way or the highway, and many times their way is not that great, and there's a lot of benefit to having other elders. So I would answer those two questions as, yes, it's absolutely ideal to have elders in the church, but if there are no men qualified, then obviously you won't have elders. And two, if you only find one man who's qualified, well, I would just wait until you find another man to serve with him. The more the merrier, obviously, but I definitely think at least two. And that's not just an opinion, that's because that's what you see in the Bible, that elders are usually spoken of in the plural. So I hope that's clear. I hope that's helpful. Lord willing, I'll see you next time.